Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the biggest questions out there. Why are some countries rich and others poor? Now, this isn't just a simple question of economics. Oh no. It's been the center of a huge battle of ideas for decades. So let's get into it and unpack the theories that have tried to explain our world. I mean, it's the question, isn't it? We look around the world and see these massive gaps in wealth. What's really behind it? Is it about a country's history, its resources, or is it about the rules of the global game itself? And let's push that a little further. What if the very word development isn't as innocent as it sounds? What if this goal of helping countries develop has actually been a way for powerful nations to stay in control, almost like a new form of colonialism? And that leads us to the big one. Right now, today, can poorer countries actually catch up? Is the system set up for everyone to have a fair shot, or are the dice loaded from the start? These are the kinds of tough questions at the very heart of development theory. So here's our game plan. We'll start with the basics. What even is a theory? Then we'll look at the first big idea that came from the West. After that, we'll dive into the major challenges to that idea, ask if development itself is the issue, and finally, see why all this stuff still matters so much today. All right, first things first. When we say theory, what are we actually talking about? Okay, that sounds super academic, right? But really, all it means is that a theory is a tool we use to make sense of things. It's like a lens that helps us look at a whole mess of information and see a pattern to understand why the world works the way it does. And what's really crucial to understand is that these theories don't just pop out of thin air. They're born out of their time. The Communist Manifesto, it was a direct response to the Industrial Revolution. And the theories we're about to discuss, they came right out of the chaos and change of the post-World War II era, when empires were collapsing and the Cold War was heating up. So picture this. World War II is over. Colonial empires are crumbling and dozens of new countries are gaining independence. A huge question mark hangs in the air. What now? And right on cue, the West came forward with a very clear, very confident answer. They called it modernization theory, and it was basically a step-by-step recipe for progress. Step 1, leave your traditional past behind. Step 2, fire up the engines of capitalism and industrialize just like the West did. Step 3, adopt Western-style governments and institutions. It was presented as the one true path to becoming a modern, developed nation. But here's the thing. For a lot of these new countries, it just wasn't working. They followed the recipe, but the promised prosperity never showed up. And this massive failure sparked an incredible, powerful new idea. Not from the US or Europe, but from Latin America and the global South. And this new idea, dependency theory, basically flipped the whole script. It said, hold on, the problem isn't that our societies are traditional or backwards. The problem is the global system itself. It's not designed to help us. It's designed to keep us poor and dependent. Thinkers like Andre Gunder Frank put it this way. Wealth isn't trickling down. It's being hoovered up. The global economy works like a giant pump, sucking resources and wealth out of the poor countries, what he called the periphery, and sending it straight to the rich industrialized countries at the center. Okay, but the challenge didn't stop there. Things got even more radical. A new wave of thinkers started asking a really explosive question. What if we're not just using the wrong method of development? What if the whole idea of development is the problem? This quote from Boaventura de Sousa Santos just nails it. The argument from decolonial thinkers is that the Western mindset that gave us development is also the one that gave us climate change and massive inequality. So how can we expect it to solve the very problems it created? Santos talks about this idea he calls abyssal thinking. It's like an invisible but incredibly deep line was drawn during the colonial era. On one side, you have Western societies, seen as fully human, whose knowledge is science and whose history matters. On the other side, colonial societies, whose knowledge is dismissed as folklore and whose histories are basically ignored. And here's the knockout punch. From this perspective, development is just another word for Westernization. It's a tool used to convince the rest of the world that the only way to be successful is to be more like the West, which, surprise, surprise, keeps the West on top. So after a critique that powerful, you might be thinking, okay, let's just scrap the whole thing. The word development is toxic. But it's not quite that simple. A scholar named Jan Nederveen Pieterse makes a really compelling case here. He says, look, yes, development has been used as a tool of domination, but it's also a battleground. It's the very arena where ideas from the South, like dependency theory, could be heard around the world. So instead of abandoning it, he says we should see it as a space of struggle, where people can fight for their own vision of a better future. So, after all that back and forth, all that intellectual wrestling, where does that leave us today? What does development even mean now? Well, the short answer is there is no single answer anymore. The era of one big idea is over. Today, the field is this amazing, chaotic mix. You've still got the classic focused on economic growth, but it's now competing with everything from state-led models like China's to small local projects run by NGOs to radical groups who reject the whole system. And of course, the massive idea that none of this matters if it's not environmentally sustainable. And that brings us right back to the beginning. Understanding this whole battle of ideas forces us to be critical, to ask where our own ideas about progress and a better life actually come from. It leaves us with the biggest question of all. If the old maps are biased, how do we draw a new one? What should progress even look like for everyone on this planet?